Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we're here at the Small Cells World Summit in London's Docklands, where I'm talking to John Naylor, who is the CTO and founder of CBNL, Cambridge Broadband Network Ltd. Let's begin at the beginning and talk about the history and evolution of small cells. They've been around for a while, they've gone through several distinct phases and have spawned different strands of work, endeavour, whatever it may be. Where do you expect to see small technology over the next 5 years? Where's it going to go and why is it going to go there?
Okay, I think it's pretty interesting. So at the moment we're really in the era of enterprise small cells as I see it. So we heard some statistics this morning about how 70% of mobile calls were made inside buildings, and how a real problem for operators is getting signal penetration into buildings. And that's driven a real appetite from building owners and operators to improve in-building performance, particularly in enterprise locations. So we're thinking about things like shopping malls, stadiums, office buildings and so on. I think that's, you can see there's a really clear demand there and a very good business case, and I think that's really where lots of focus is at the moment. Residential small cells, where the majority of small cells, several million, have been deployed to date, still a big ongoing area. But the place which has surprised some people by being a bit slower is in urban or metro small cells. So that's, you know, the kind of lamppost type deployments that I think maybe 2 years ago people thought that was really going to take off in a big way and be a solution to capacity problems for network operators, but still hasn't taken off in any meaningful way. And I think now there's a little bit of a question mark that people are saying, well, if this really takes much longer, this is going to kind of crash into the back of into the early part of 5G rollout, and perhaps I can find other ways to deal with this capacity problem. So I think the urban small cell environment is the place which is the most uncertain still, and always has been to some extent, and enterprise is really where lots of the action is today.
We both well remember the hype of 2 or 3 years ago. Again, it's one of these areas where expectations really haven't been met. Do you think they're going to be met at all? Do you think this is always going to be a niche, given that we have by 2020 5G out there, which is a completely different animal?
I think it's a really valid question, because it's now the hiatus, if you like, has been going on for so long that you have to question, is it really hiatus or is it just never going to happen? I think that's a very valid question to ask. Speaking for CBNL itself, I mean, we develop backhaul and enterprise access solutions both for macro backhaul, small cell backhaul and enterprise applications generally. And what we're seeing from our customers is real interest in being able to provide topical small cell backhaul, but in the context of a more general purpose network that they can use for macro backhaul and enterprise access applications as well. And obviously if one does that, then the amount of technical risk, the business case for those small cells is much improved, because you're sharing the assets from other applications to provide that backhaul service. So I think that could be something we'll see more of. So small cells as being a kind of a vertical slice in a network, but probably a smaller slice than people were originally thinking. I think that's fair to say. Okay,
thank you. One of the big controversies of the moment is concerns about what's being generically called LTEU, or LAA in standard speak. That's LTE basically across a public spectrum. How do you think this should be viewed?
Well, it's a really interesting question, as you say. It's got lots of controversy, particularly because the Wi-Fi lobby is very strong, and I think perhaps unjustly feel that they have some ownership of that spectrum. The reality is it's unlicensed spectrum, and within certain technical parameters, people are free to use it as they like for LTE or Wi-Fi or something else. My technical perspective on it is that Wi-Fi was designed as an indoor local area wireless network, and today it's often used in scenarios which are a very long way from that. So a mass environment like this, where there are thousands of nodes perhaps trying to use a network, and it actually doesn't really work very well. It doesn't scale very well. Right at the heart of how it's designed in the Mac is not particularly scalable, and that's something that LTE can really address, and LTE obviously has proven itself well and was designed from the ground up to be scalable to tens of thousands of nodes looking for simultaneous data access. So in terms of, if we take it back to, well, what do people want? People want access to data, and I think in certain environments like here, LTE LAA or LTEU are good ways to do that, better ways than Wi-Fi actually. In a home environment, of course, Wi-Fi is always going to be there, probably in small offices, home offices. Wi-Fi is always going to be there, probably as the lowest cost solution. And because there isn't significant competition, significant congestion, it's going to work really well. But there are certainly environments where LTE-LAA, I think, is the better technical solution. And hopefully then, I'm a technologist, so hopefully you like to see the best technical solutions win in the marketplace.
Let's put technology aside, and we can't very far, but let's put it slightly aside. The critics of LTE reckon this is going to be an ideal way for the big telcos to get a hammerlock on unlicensed spectrum and hang on to it for grim death. It's either that, or ultimately it's a user-friendly method of aggregating data to provide better service to users. Which do you think it is, and why?
Well, that's really looking for sort of prognostication there.
Well, yes.
Very, very hard to say. I personally, I think it's a bit unjust to accuse operators of looking to get a lock on spectrum where really the Wi-Fi camp are looking to continue a lock on spectrum, if you like. And I think that's probably the pot calling the kettle black. I think the reality is that the LTE-LAA solutions will find a niche, and it will probably be in stadiums, campuses, areas where there are thousands of devices looking for simultaneous access. And Wi-Fi will continue to predominate in other areas, and I think certainly the install base of Wi-Fi gives it a weight that means that it can't be not considered. And of course the LTE-LAA and LTE-U standards have technical features for cooperation, to go back to the technical side again, but there are features for cooperation there. So I think it's a little bit unreasonable to paint the operators quite so black, personally.
Okay, let's round off with a question about small cells and 5G. We've skirted around the subject, discussed it in some depth, but let's go a bit further. There's a lot of talk around the world about Network 2020. 2020 seems to be the year in which everybody expects 5G to be working properly and available in lots and lots and lots of places. How important are small cells going to be in that 5G scenario?
Well, central really. I think the interesting thing about 5G is it'll be the first iteration of the 3GPP standards where small cells will be an integral part of those standards. So if we look at 3G and even 4G and even the LTE advanced standards, small cells are kind of a little bit adjunct to the main standardization processes, whereas you can see that with 5G that's not going to be possible for it to be the case. 5G, of course, is seeking to cover lots of different applications, also Internet of Things and other applications like that. So we'll be much broader and won't necessarily just be dealing with increased data rates, although that's a key part of it, but we'll be dealing with an increased breadth of applications. And you can see that addressing the small cell use cases, both residential and enterprise, and also the urban and rural use cases, that will be central to the way that the 5G standards as a whole are written, I believe. And I think that will mean that after 2020, perhaps the distinction between small cells and other cells will begin to evaporate a little bit, and we'll just consider rolling out some kind of HETnet using the most appropriate type of transmitting or transceiving device for the application. And we won't necessarily think in terms of a division between small cells and macro and other types of cell.
Well, hopefully we'll see what happens. Still be around to see it happen.
Sure
but as usual, John Naylor, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, pleasure.